Hi everyone. Good afternoon. I recognize that I'm standing between you and lunch, and so I'll keep my story brief. What I wanted to share today is my story, right? And just my recognition of how I interpreted equality, how I interpreted networks, and how I interpreted actually navigating a corporate career. So maybe I'll start with a little bit about myself. I come from a Tamil family, and in my family, there was no distinction between my brothers and me in anything we did. Absolutely no distinction. If we got 99 out of 100 in math, we would all get yelled at. No distinction. Where did you lose that one mark? And our grandfather would yell at all of us. He would parade us down to make sure we read Shakespeare. We would sit through it extremely tortured. But my brothers and I, everybody had to go through it. I went to B school, and in B school, there was a class of 50. Out of that 50, there were 6 women and 44 men. Didn't bother me, in fact, I was pretty confident that it doesn't matter, I'm still better than most of them. Because that's how I was raised. That's the environment I was raised in. I finished B school, I joined GE. I started my career with GE in one of the most coveted leadership programs at that point, called as IMLP. And we were 15 people, 3 women and 12 men. Better than B school, but still not really great. Again, it didn't even stand out for me, because how is it different? How are we different? And, that's how I've seen life. So I'll give you a little bit about myself, right? I'm, I'm a Tamil girl who married a Punjabi boy who I met in a B school. It's textbook 2 states. And as we started our life together, I joined the IT leadership program at GE. He joined the finance leadership program at GE. Exactly the same pay. Exactly the same pay for the next 5 years, because we finished one program, we both finished top of the class, we were picked for the next leadership program, which was called as corporate audit staff. Exactly same pay, men and women are equal. And that's the narrative that I've always believed. I've always lived through that narrative. And it was a crazy life, right? So we would, every 4 months, we would be in a new country, in a new business, auditing something completely different. Sometimes he would be in India, I would be in Poland. Sometimes he would be in the US, I would be in Budapest. There was absolutely, life was, what do you say, that fast-paced, accelerated career. You're living the dreams, you're collecting frequent flyer miles. And felt wonderful, felt like awesome. My career is going as planned. I'm enjoying every bit of it. We finished this program about 5 years into my career, and as my introduction says, I've had a 15-year career, and when I look back at it, I think of it as 3 tranches. The first tranche of 5 years was extremely accelerated. I was a young woman who thought the world is my oyster, and I was ready to take it on. I was doing well, I was confident. And so, as I was winding up my first 5 years of leadership programs and all of that, we got tired of this constant travel. We just got tired. There was no place to call home. It was constantly, you picking up a flight. We lived out of suitcases, and there was an exhaustion. So we said, all right, we'll wind this up, come back to India and settle down. Now, as a married woman, when you come back to India, when you're 30 and you settle down, there is a constant look that you get. Every wedding you go, every family gathering you go, there's a look, which expects an answer. And it's the classic, when is the good news? And, as we started digesting it, we figured that, we also would like to have a child. And so, obviously, at that point, nothing has changed. Man and woman are equal. My husband and I made the exact same amount of money. We had exact similar careers. And not for the minutest time did I think or did I expect that that's going to change. I got pregnant, and I was one of those blessed few who had a tough pregnancy. So straight, 9 months on bed rest, then a C-section, and then 3 more months on bed rest. So 1 year straight on the bed. And I'm processing this, right? So from that high frequent flyer miles to not getting out of a bed, not being able to walk to the bathroom or a kitchen, I think it just took a mental toll on me. What am I doing with my life? My son was born, and I assumed, very naively that life is just going back to normal. I'll start working again. And I think, like most women have said here, right? It was a 3-month maternity leave. And at the end of 3 months, very excitedly, I was like, all right, I'll go in. The first day, trying to leave my son and going into work and trying to manage a project. And honestly, how is it even equal? On one side, it's a project that needs me to be here, but on the other side, it's a small infant whose existence depends on my availability, depends on my presence. How are they even equal, and what am I going to balance, right? That whole question of what is balance, how am I going to balance, I think it just hit me hard on those first couple of days that I trudged into work. The next 3 years were hard for me. And the place I come from is that, I've always wanted to race ahead. I have never seen myself as different from any man. And so my brain could never fathom, why is my career slowing down? Why are the people who graduated, the guys who graduated from programs similar as mine, slowly I'm seeing that they're making more money. Slowly I'm seeing that they're getting better positions. I wasn't getting such challenging positions as I was capable of. And slowly I can see them zoom ahead. I didn't even have to look too far. My husband at home, we were exactly the same. And I saw my husband zooming ahead. I was thrilled, I was happy, I was thrilled about his successes, about what he was doing with his career. He was doing phenomenally well, and he was supporting me through all the madness that I was going through at work. But it still wasn't registering. I think over those 3-4 years, I've spent an agonizing amount of time in my head. I kept thinking, why? Why am I so low about this? I still have a job. I still have a job that sort of challenges me. I can focus on my son and I can be with him, and, I can pick him up from the bus stop and I can feed him, and, I can do all of that. Then why is it bugging me so much? And over time, as I kept, talking to myself in my head, I think the enlightenment that I had was that somewhere for me, I had associated my identity, my happiness, everything with my professional career and my achievements. I had forgotten to calibrate that, and this is the narrative that even I'd learned from my family, right? Like, you are what you achieve. But I had forgotten that happiness doesn't have to be so complicated. Happiness is a very simple construct, And so I had to sit down and just rewire myself and understand that the classic that I had believed, that man and women are identical, man and woman are equal, it's not a very straightforward mathematical equation. When we put a man, a woman, and a child as a construct of a family, it's a different definition. It's a definition where we all have unique roles and we all bring something to the table, which over time it may change, it may evolve. But it's not, identical is not the right way to think about it. Or equality, even as you define it for yourself, has to evolve. It has to be in understanding what you bring to the table, understanding an equal amount that your husband brings to the table, and how you come together beautifully to form the construct of a family. And slowly, over time, agonizingly and painfully, I rewired my brain that this is how we probably should function, or maybe this is my reality. And so, truthfully, at that time, I felt that this narrative was something I was telling myself to calm my nerves, to just feel better, to pick myself up. But today, close to 7-8 years after those few years, I really, really think understanding that is is what gives me a superpower in terms of how I navigate my life now. Now, around this time again, like I was telling you, my husband was doing phenomenally well. I was living vicariously through his successes. He got some very coveted promotions, and I was just enjoying his success. But somewhere, truthfully, if I'm being honest to myself, I was missing that success because we were the same. We were the same for the first 5 years. Then why am I not getting that share of it? As I moved forward, my family kept telling me, so my parents-in-law, my husband, that listen, you go do whatever you want. We are here for you. You go do. But, life would be so simple if we understand that, right? We burden ourselves with mom guilt. We burden ourselves with so many bondages that we tie our legs and hands with. So everybody was willing to help, but I was not willing to take it. I wanted to do it all. I wanted to, race ahead in my career. I wanted to be there for my son completely. And life moved on. I made my peace that, it's okay. Maybe when he is 5, I will put my foot on the accelerator again. And that's the magic number I had heard from most parents that, listen, when your child becomes 5 years old, life gets better. So I said, okay, maybe when he's 5, I'll start accelerating again. Incidentally, what I found for myself is that, the ways of the world are interesting. When you are ready for something, it comes to you. And so somewhere around when my son was 4.5, I got a call from a company and, the role sounded amazing. It sounded exactly what I wanted to do. It sounded exactly what I was good at and what was my, my affection to technology. So my viewpoint with technology is here to serve a business need. And the way I look at technology is that give me a business problem and see how well I solve it with technology. That's my niche, right? And so somewhere over time, I had moved away from that niche, even though it was my strength. But when this opportunity came, it basically gave me the opportunity to go work exactly where I wanted to work, and I didn't feel like saying no. So every conversation, every phone call with first HR, with talent acquisition, then the manager, then the CEO, every conversation, I used to have a post analysis with my husband. How will this work? If I take this job, how will we make it work? At that time, I used to live in Prestige Shantiniketan residential complex, and I used to work in Prestige Shantiniketan commercial complex. From the time I left my door to the time I sat on my desk was 6 minutes. So if my son yelled, I could actually hear it and come running back. So how would I move from that to going from Whitefield to Hebal, and how would we even manage? I told myself more than my husband, let's do this one step at a time. Let's not overthink it. So every conversation, every step, I would ask him, "Tu manage kar lega na? If I go, you'll be fine, right?" And he would, "Go ahead, let's see." Every step, I said, let me not get ahead of myself. Let me get the job, then we will figure it out. So as I started having conversations, I had my final round was with the CEO. She's a woman, and 30 minutes with her, and I was inspired through every pore. I loved who I was talking to. I loved who she was. I wanted to grow up and become like her. I was, just enamored by that conversation. And so I said, maybe I should think about this. That's when I realized things are getting serious. And I said, okay, maybe this is the right opportunity for me to move to. But it was damn hard because I was in GE. My husband was in GE. GE, I had been with the company for 11 and a half years. And in those 11 and a half years, the company knew exactly what was my definition of balance. And they would not trample with it. At 3 p.m., I would go pick up my son, and they were cool with that, right? They never asked me to stop. We were a dual career house, and it was always easier to figure out a dual career if it's in the same company. So that decision was like leaving home for me, leaving my comfortable home, which had been so good to me. But somewhere I realized the time has come. I want to live my career. I want to fly my flight. I want to live my dreams. And this opportunity sort of sounded right in the alley of what I always wanted to do. And so I said, okay, let's move forward. So they came back to me with an offer. And I looked at the offer and I said no. And again, this is not something women are great at. We don't know how to ask money. And I didn't say no because I was negotiating. I said no because I was crystal clear that the incremental money they were giving me was not worth the time I was going to stay away from my family. And that is what comes back to my inner monologue, and that clarity that I had built for myself, that this is what I want out of life. This is my, this is what balance to me means to me. This is what I want to be there for my son. I want to be there for my husband. This is how I want to navigate. So I said, no, this is not worth it. For 10 lakhs extra, like I'll be away from my child. I'll lose my flexibility. I'm not doing this. So I said no, and I said, thank you for the opportunity. I enjoyed it, and that's about it. And I was genuinely cool with it. I didn't have any problem. They came back. They asked me, how much do you want? The CEO really loved you. How much do you want? And that's when my devil horns went up. I want equal pay for being a woman as a man would be paid. So all those friends who zoomed ahead of me when I was raising my child, I want to be compensated for that. And so I said, that's my dream number. 10 days, there was silence. There was absolute silence. I was stressing. And all the stressing was happening when we had taken our entire family with us to Maldives to celebrate my husband's promotion. And there was no signal, and I was agonizing as, is there going to be any call? They came back after 10 days, and they beat the number. They gave me, as a token, a couple of lakhs more than what I had asked for. For me, that was fate's way. That I believe in, signs and symbols. That was God's way of saying that you did the right thing. You paused. Not that I knew that it was a pause, but what you did was okay. You didn't lose out. And so, I started my second innings, as I'd call it. I never really stopped. I slowed down, even though I never wanted to slow down. I started my second innings. And the beauty of it is that I would leave home at 7 because if I had to reach Hebbal in one piece, I had to leave before traffic started. And so now my husband was the one who was getting my son ready. He was the one dropping my son to the bus stop. He was the one who would often be seen at parks, bringing him back or getting him there. And we as a family came up with our own construct of what balance is. The balance shifted. It was not the same as it was 5 years ago, but it works for us. As my career, I spent 2.5 years in that company, and as my career moved forward, the challenges also increased. The complexity of the roles I took increased. So today, in my role with Cummins, I travel a lot. I have a husband who is a business leader. He travels a lot. We've come up with this weird concoction mechanism where our EAs war for who puts a travel on the calendar first, and whoever puts it first is the one who gets to travel. And so we have very weird ways of navigating the madness that our professional and our personal life is, and that balance is for us. And it keeps evolving on a day-to-day basis. Today, my husband is, there are times when I travel more, and he is fully equipped to solo parent, as I am fully equipped to solo parent. And that's what we evolved as balance for ourselves. The story I shared today is probably all of our stories. It's an ordinary story. All of us have lived through it. It's a story of every girl who's grown up wanting to be competitive, who's grown up ambitious. It's a story of every woman who's got a shock of her life that things change when a child is born. It's a story of every couple who's trying to balance, right? You wake up, first thing you look at each other is not a sweet good morning, but how's your day look like? Who'll pick him up from the daycare, right? And so it's that story. But one thing that I reflect back and I hold dear, even as I navigated for myself in my head, that what does this journey mean for me? How is it important? Why do I do this? Why do I show up for work? I have leaned in on a lot of women to support me to listen to my nonsense when I was struggling with crystallizing it in my head. Asha, who preceded me, was a colleague at GE. I would often walk into her room and just talk to her that, listen, this doesn't make sense, and I would just vent. And so, for me, I find it amazing that we are in a room full of women technologists today. I have goosebumps that, that's what progress is and that's where we are today. And as we move forward, the one thing I'd like to leave you with is that don't shy away from looking for a shoulder to lean on. It's fine. Nor should you ever shy away from extending your hand to someone who's looking for some help. Because equality is not about being identical, but equality is a construct where we genuinely own the fact that we are feminine. We are beautifully feminine. We thrive with sisterhoods. And if we can do that so beautifully in our personal life, if we bring in our whole feminine self to work and develop those sisterhoods at work, we can honestly help all of ourselves rise. So thank you so much.